Oh, hello, and welcome to another Today's Decay. We're celebrating births and beginnings of everything important since the dawn of time. It is January 6th, and here are all the dates that really rate. Sometimes people ask me what I'm doing. Good question. Yeah, I don't know. I'm not so sure myself. The point is that every day is otherwise very similar, whether you're working from home, schlepping to and from the office. It's just another day. And doesn't make sense. I don't really believe in holidays. I don't feel like I was really raised that way. You can celebrate any old day. It's kind of like an excuse on close your eyes and point to a date on the calendar and say like, all right, today we'll get together because otherwise we forget and life passes by and oh look, it's been weeks, months, years since we've seen each other, and that's not right. Right? So the thought was to create a calendar of the whole year of all sorts of things since the beginning of documented time of when did things start, whether it's some musician, writer, filmmaker, you name it. Anytime somebody was born on that moment of creation, that like was this somebody who was going to wind up producing something inspiring for the world or not. Same goes for when movies come out. Are they going to flop? Are they going to be a success? Are they going to be like a sleeper where like, you know, on re-release years later, maybe they find a cult audience? There's that one moment at beginnings where like you don't know if everything's not going to just fall apart or not, you know? Kind of anxiety ridden now that I think about it, to call attention to that moment of uncertainty. Anyway, today, 1926, I think he's Mr. Universe. Mickey Hargitay was born. Bodybuilder who was married to Jane Mansfield, who was the Crimson Executioner in the Bloody Pit of Horror that Severin Films just put out a cleaned up, remastered version of, which I'm really looking forward to checking out. What else? 1929 today, the film The Last Warning came out. You probably might not know of it. There was a whole string of haunted house movies in the mid to late 1920s, silent films, to capitalize on the raging success that was it The Bat or was it The Cat and the Canary? One or the other. I think it was The Bat. It was like a Broadway play that was like a runaway success, and so wound up resulting in a whole series of other Broadway plays capitalizing on their success. So you have The Gorilla, The Cat and the Canary, assuming The Bat was the first one. I don't know. A bunch of others. And they're not supernatural, but they're just like haunted house, creaky haunted house, which this apartment is really creaky, which just adds to the atmosphere. And I pay more for that, you see? Yeah. Anyway, so there's a whole series of stage plays that were then translated into film versions in the mid to late 20s, which is also one of the best times for film production in like a multi-decade span, because like in the 19 teens and into the early 20s, you have some great performances, but more often than not, it's really difficult camera work, lighting, but then by the mid-20s, especially with the help of the German expressionists like Karl Freund, you really got a whole new, they created a whole language of filmmaking production that was able to create much more atmospheric productions. And this is like the height. And then sound comes in like starting in 27-ish to 29, 30. and it's like all starting from scratch because the microphones are really not particularly sensitive, and they can't figure out how to do this properly. So it doesn't really happen again until for like probably a decade later, if not more, that the industry redefines how to tell stories. What is my point? My point. Last Warning hits in 1929. Last Warning is a haunted house film that takes place in like a haunted uh, live theater, and it's really atmospheric, and it's directed by Paul Lenny, who was a horror genre director before the horror genre truly existed. So he directed The Cat and the Canary, which I'd say this is like a direct follow-up. All the like really awesome atmosphere in The Cat and the Canary can be found in this one as well. I think in between these two films made The Man Who Laughs, one of the best silent films ever made, maybe one of my favorite films ever, actually. I always hate saying things like that. And yet there I did. It's really good. Conrad Veidt, Mary Philbin, Paul Lenny. Excellent, excellent stuff. Yeah, so what else can I tell you about this? Here is a photo play of The Cat and the Canary, Paul Lenny's film. I love that artwork. Something really, Laura LaPlante. There's something about this era that like just cannot be redone. You know, it was then and it's wonderful, and now it's gone. Speaking of gone, sadly, here is a novelization, British novelization of The Last Warning. Honest, if you can read that there somewhere or another. Yeah, so speaking of gone, the dust jacket for this, which is some beautiful Art Deco dust jacket artwork, lost to time. Thankfully, both those films are not lost to time. You can probably see it on YouTube or something. Nobody's really... I think they're public domain, I'm pretty sure. Yeah, so there wasn't really a horror genre until... Because everything... These are not supernatural movies. They're basically Scooby-Doo episodes, which is fine. Who doesn't love Scooby-Doo? At least those painted backdrops, right? There's not really a horror genre until Dracula, at which point now suddenly there are real monsters, and it's not just like an old man in a rubber mask, but true supernatural creatures. And Paul Lenny was supposed to direct Dracula. The blood is the life, dear Renfield. Not in the case of Paul Lenny, because he died of blood poisoning shortly before the film was made. But there's this whole like Marvel's what if of what would have happened if he had lived, because yeah, I think there was like there was a different group of people involved with the production. Like the script was different. Like if he had lived, Todd Browning would not have been involved. Carl Freund would not have been involved. Would Bela Lugosi have definitely gotten the role? He wasn't like their number one contender to begin with. So there's a whole bunch of like lots of other possibilities of how this could have gone. Maybe in some alternate universe, that is what happened. I don't know. Anyway, yeah, that's the whole day. From us to you, till tomorrow. If this is how you want to spend your day, January 6th, I have given you your last warning.